this seminar is to get all the stakeholders, the military practitioners, the industry, the academia, the scientific community on one platform so that we achieve congruence and convergence in force development. And we have the Chief Integrated Defence Staff, General Rajeshwar, out here, whose sole responsibility is to ensure modernization and an effective armed forces. We also have the DG Eros was to be here, but he'll be joining the next session. So we have a fair representation of all the decision makers and decision contributors. You know, we all know that India faces multiple challenges, a full spectrum conflict. We have on our northern borders China, with whom we share our borders of 3,488 kilometers. China claims a little over 110,000 square kilometers of territory. And air defense is very important on the northern borders also.
So I see what the challenges of warfare have been. And before that, I've been a practitioner in one of the biggest, theaters or course, as you may like, where I feel that whatever business we do on the ground, there's no way with whether you can go forward or hold people back without giving due cognizance to the air dimension and the air threats. So I think today the warfare thing, you cannot plan in silos. It has to be an integrated plan. And therefore, coming from the, from the perspective of jointmanship, this is very key, because if this doesn't happen, we can keep talking about jointmanship. The fear is we'll not be able to only, we'll be able to talk about it, but not be able to affect it. And that's why I always take these opportunities seriously to have a look at what is obtaining today. At the outset, what are the kinds of threats there are in the aerial dimension?
Firstly, about the 14th September, the oil fields, Saudi Arabia oil fields. Look at how with the precision those UAVs, those drones, swamps. I mean, they planned almost from 600, 700 kilometers away. They planned and targeted those oil pipelines and disrupted the whole world. So that's the power of precision even the UAVs have adopted today. Secondly, I'll take you to 28th of September again. The attack by these Houthis, that Yemen and all that, on a proper, I'll say, integrated brigade of the Saudi Arabia. That place, I'm just forgetting, Afraz or something, the name of the place. You look at that, the Houthis are ragtag force. They are not, they don't have access to the high quality technology. But the way they use drones, they use missiles and all that they had at the disposal. And the Saudis, there were 3 brigades in that area. Integrated brigade that we talk about. And the best part, that brigades all are being commanded by today General Rashid, who was earlier the chief of Pakistan Army.
The markets reacted so violently that the price of oil surged 15% across the world. One strike. A low cost, ease of accessibility, simple strategy, low signature, $5,000 or less the cost of the drone, versus millions of dollars that you will employ as an air defense weapon to counter this.
Good morning and welcome to the session. And we have lined up a nice 4 talks for you. And without further ado, I request the first speaker to commence his presentation and tell us about, he is going to emphasize on drones apart from covering the entire overview of air defense. So over to you.
While technologically we have moved ahead, certainly it is a requirement for the air warriors like us to adapt to these changing environments and threat scenario, which requires change in our thought process and adapt to these future challenges. Good morning, officers. I'll be covering within the next 15 to 20 minutes. I like to cover the evolving facets of air threats with special emphasis on sub-conventional aerial threats and our preparedness to handle such threats. The scope of my presentation will include aerial threat and challenges, the core issues and changing nature of threats, air defense capability building measures, and drone terror, which is now troubling each and every one of us all across the globe, while elaborating in brief the counter-drone measures which we are taking over or undertaking in our country.
The attack on Saudi Arabia, it threw out of the window a couple of things. One is the air defense planning aspect itself, and two, the much touted efficacy of air defense weapon systems, and also the much talked about cost benefit analysis. So I would say the unmanned aerial vehicles, although it has been around since manned aircraft, from the times of manned aircraft, in the last couple of years, it's metamorphed or mutated, I would say, into a new species, altogether new species. And it's giving sleepless nights to all the agencies who are designated, who are entrusted with the task of force protection, who are entrusted with the task of protecting critical assets. And like in some of our gods that we have here in our country, it's known by quite a number of names. But I'll stick to these two terms, UAVs and drones.
The fire control radar is basically its heart of the system is an high precision track radar and assisted with a command and control system with all the most advanced algorithms and with the ballistic computation. This is also known as a gun laying radar or target illuminator or as a fire control director. And this radar is important in both the land and naval air defense systems. How an FCR fits into the AD scenario, this is depicted in this slide. You can see the left side there is an conventional or advanced search radar from where we get multiple target detection, and from that point the FCR takes over up to the engagement of the gun and the firing of the gun. So the first part is the target designation that I will dwell upon details in the subsequent slide. And again, the heart of the system is an high precision monopulse track radar, and followed by the command and control system for weapon engagement and the ballistic computation.
I'm in very unique situation right now. I intend to speak about air defense, that back home, my soldiers using my systems, and one of the battery commander is outside, is fighting against rockets, defending our country against rockets that are launching against my family in Israel. Till now, they launch more than 1,000 rockets. We don't have severe casualties. We have someone break his leg, someone get some glasses. But this is the main mission of defense, to protect your homeland, to protect your forces. And the last comment, I know and I'm aware that I'm the last gap before the lunch, so I should be efficient, interesting. If no, you throw me out. I intend to speak about the MSHORAD. MSHORAD, which means maneuvering short-range air defense.
This is a session on emerging technologies. I was telling General Arora just now that since the time this seminar and exhibition of Sanjos and IMR began in 2010 or 11, I've always chaired sessions here, and I've always gained a lot more than chairing a session than being a speaker myself. Because I always feel that from these sessions, you get to know what the pulse is all about and where we need to go. For example, this is a technology session. And what is technology? Technology is a key to Army Air Defense. It is a driver to Army Air Defense. It is an enabler to Army Air Defense like any other. Talking of air defense, there are two sides of the coin, as you all know. Prosecutors of the air threat and defenders from the air threat. Now the prosecutors, gentlemen, have moved a long way from the days when in a propeller-driven aircraft, the bomber used to stand guiding his mechanical guns on the target and trying to hit them by hit and trial method.
Aircraft actually nowadays are in a situation wherein the ground threat, the surface-to-air missile threat is getting more and more potent. The balance has been skewing towards the ground threat. They are getting missiles of longer range. We in the Air Force itself are procuring missiles like LRSAM, which go up to 70 plus kilometers, and so it is becoming a very lethal environment for airborne platforms, whether it be transport aircraft or fighters. Going anywhere close to the enemy is a very difficult proposition. So in order to remain relevant, to retain the combat edge, what do we need? We need better capability compared to what the adversary's ground systems have. We've been talking, the Air Force likes to talk about effect-based operations, which you're all aware. So we like to hit the minimum ammunition at the point which will have the maximum effect. So what comes into this is a standoff strike capability, which we are trying to achieve with getting new platforms like Rafale or integrating standoff weapons onto the Su-30, getting accuracies so that we have least collateral damages. I'm sure you have seen missiles going through windows, and I'm proud to say that Indian Air Force has such capability even as of today.
Air defense in the maritime environment is similar, yet different in many ways from the air defense concepts of the Army and the Air Force. There are numerous challenges that the medium of sea poses for air defense. Primary among them is the presence of a large number of neutrals, owing to the freedom of navigation and overflight on the high seas. The area in which we operate, and indeed where we fight, belongs to no one, and yet it belongs to all of us as a global commons. Further, the launch platform, that is the ships, are inherently in motion. And the parameters of motion include the forward movement of the ship, include roll, which can range from 10 to 15 degrees to as much as 30 degrees, pitch, yaw, and all of the motions which are unpredictable and work in tandem, which all hinder the generation of an accurate fire control solution. The maritime environment in itself is challenging with limitations of the sea state, weather, clutter, and radar horizon range.
I would like to understand how much is the involvement of Navy in research topics and research subjects or the platform, especially the one which are not existing anywhere in the world, and are there any limitations of Navy's involvement?
This word actually, this is defense, air defense. In the past 1 year, we from paramilitary officers or from CISF, BSF, there have been some cases, as you've seen, the cross-border weapons being dropped. And recently, hardly 1 month back, we got some MHA SOP which has been made on regarding.
The point that emerged yesterday was how do you meet the emerging challenges in the air defense of our, not only the nation, airspace, but also internal security duties. Like I said yesterday, 6 lakh drones is what is envisaged in the country in the coming 2 years. If that be so, who is going to be controlling that? Who is going to be monitoring that? Who is going to see their usage? Who is going to make sure that none of these drones do a damage which is unacceptable to us? Criminal activities will take place. It is not the criminal activities so much, but it is the non-criminal activities which are anti-national activities, which of course will dominate our thought process and our equipping profile and our task thereafter, including training. We'll have to train people to make out the difference between inadvertent drone which is in the air and a mischievous one. So there are a lot of things to be done, and the drone policy, like was brought yesterday, 2 years and 3 months old, that needs revision. So there are things which are already in the making. However, we have got some good inputs yesterday. I think we'll get including as many good inputs today also.
So I thought I'll give my perspective on this subject, and as to how I feel is this air and missile defense now, what are the issues which we face, and how I look back when I myself was a trainee. How do I compare what were we doing as a young officer when I did my VIOS course or the advanced AD course or the long gunnery staff course that time, and now when I am at the Home of Affairs responsible for the training in the AD. If I go back, of course, take you back to 83, when I myself I just got commissioned, went for my VIOS, almost 3.5 decades back. At that time, perhaps the AD modernization has kicked off. In fact, it's at a time when even Pakistan has started inducting F-16s and they had Hugh Cobra. The modernization of the AD was perhaps in the backdrop of the 71 Ops. We learned many lessons, and in any war, as you know, the Air Force plays a very significant role. Like it may be the Battle of Britain, Yom Kippur, Gulf, anyone, and so was in 71 Ops. The Air Force had played a very prominent role, but so had the ground-based air defenses.
Just look at from the perspective that how much of difference that particular job, what you're doing right now, may not be operations directly, can have an impact on the overall synergized environment. And when you look at the entire situation, and then we realize that every job what we are assigned to or we are given to has a role to play in the overall scenario. When you look at air defense, it is something which is 24/7, irrespective of the mood or situation or time frame or the environment you are in. The alertness with respect to the air defense, it has to be nothing less than 100. Because that moment when the requirement will come is unknown. And the moment when you have to rise to the occasion is unknown. And it is something which may appear as stretching, but it is very essential for us to maintain that alertness. With respect to AD, there is no way but to be constantly on the alert, be fast and be smart at every moment what we have for every system, man or machine, whichever it may be.
So in the next 15 minutes or so, I will make an attempt to give this audience a better understanding of the nature of the air threat we face at sea and how navies try to prosecute that. Just to begin with, what exactly is a fleet? What is the purpose? What does it need? As you can see in the Navy's definition, fleet is not just a group of ships operating together, but it is an organization. An organization that, when deployed, is capable of undertaking wide variety of operations that are critical to countries' peace as well as wartime efforts. An organization that is much beyond material assets. It is a well-oiled machine which is operated by the people. You may recall what General Satinder Singh said earlier in the morning, that it is man behind the machine what matters. And we have to do best with what we have. So this is the most important component of the fleet.
When I talk about drones and UAV today, drones is something which I refer to as commercially available or hobby level remote controlled aircrafts. It could be rotor or it could be fixed wing. And when I refer to something as a UAV or a UAS, I'm referring to a military grade equipment which is to undertake a combat mission. Now gentlemen, this particular slide sums up my topic actually. You all know what happened in January 2011. This is a picture of a drone called RQ-170 Sentinel. It is one of the most advanced stealth drone in inventory of the United States. It was brought down, or as they say, captured by Iranians using so it is rumored to be using a Soviet, or I would say Russian supplied electronic warfare system. Now, this is where you see the marriage of air defense and electronic warfare. Now, bringing down a UAV it's a UAV is an air threat, is a pure air defense operation. However, using an electronic warfare system to carry out an electronic attack to bring it down falls in the realm of electronic warfare. So when we talk of these two warfares being conducted together in an integrated manner to reach a outcome, we come to the definition of air defense electronic warfare operations.
One thing which is very sure across platforms, whether it is an aircraft, tank or ships, electronics is playing a very major role. And to that extent, I am very much I concur with Brigadier Mahajan to say that autonomy is probably very far off. And what is really is there is automation.
Firstly, the electronic warfare, or I would say the BEL has performed very well as far as electronic warfare systems are concerned. But the system that we are referring to mostly is got good, I would say, performance in the command band, not so good performance in the LN band.
So first of all, compliments to such a wonderful session. Both the speakers very comprehensively they covered it, and the summing up remarks were absolutely precise and clear. Some of the questions I had, 4 or 5 of them, some of have been stolen by the previous question, and some by the answer that you gave.
Now when you look at all three services have developed their independent. You look at from the point of view of competitiveness and getting the best product. It makes sense to develop from 3-4 different people and then merge them together at a later date.
The domain of air and missile defense covers all the 3 services and may in future cover the PMFs and the police forces as well, because the threat that is evolving every day. However, the cost aspect will always remain. No country can be considered to be strategically independent till the time it depends on foreign sources for its critical protection needs. And we all know air defense is very vital. In the recent past, the world over, the new dimension of threat that is manifesting itself has further reinforced my statement of the criticality of the air defense.
2 issues I want to say. Firstly, there are certain facts and figures mentioned in my presentation. They have been taken from open source. So they may not be so accurate. So please bear with that. And second issue which I want to say is that at times during the presentation, I'll be little candid and forthright. Please bear with me because I feel that is the essence of this seminar. We need to carry out an introspection and we need to see within if there are certain shortfalls, we need to address that. So as they say that any issue which comes up in front of you can be analyzed if we divide it into smaller issues. So I'll divide this bigger question into smaller questions and then try to analyze each of the questions and give my opinion on that. Now the first smaller question that is what is indigenization? Well, in my opinion, the capability of nation of indigenously developing and producing the defense equipment. The key words here, indigenously developing and producing. Importing technology from outside, critical technologies, and assembling them here and producing a system, in my opinion, will not amount to indigenization.
When we say air and defense, air and missile defense, we are talking about aerial targets, let it be aircrafts, helicopters, UAVs, drones. Then we are talking about the cruise missiles. When we talk about missiles, we are talking about ballistic missile defense, other types of missiles. Probably we'll also have to talk about hypersonic missiles or hypersonic glide vehicles. These are all the various threats and the threat scenarios, right from when we talk about aircrafts or other systems, their RCS, their payloads which are available, radars, other sensors with them, and the RCS, as I was just mentioning, the maneuver capability of those fellows. We will little bit dwell upon on the UAVs and drones little separately. These are all the various aspects. Coming to the cruise missiles, subsonic cruise missiles, yes, again RCS is one aspect. Second is the altitude of the terminal phase. If we are actually trying to attack that in the terminal phase, the altitude of flying of the cruise missile, the subsonic cruise missile, is one aspect of what we need to keep into consideration. But then there is another class, the supersonic cruise missile, like BrahMos class. Again, as I said, need to match with the velocities. This is number one. RCS. And third, again, as I said, the altitude of flying of the missile in the terminal phase or whatever the distance of our interception, whatever we are thinking.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is my privilege to give the vote of thanks on behalf of the Center for Joint Warfare Studies. First, I would like to thank the Headquarters Integrated Defense Staff and the CISC for having approved this event to take place, and also the three service headquarters for their support in having sent the domain experts and speakers, as well as nominated the delegates to attend. And I would like to thank the Directorate General of Army Air Defense as well as the Director General himself, without whose support this event would not have been possible. The paramilitary forces who are also concerned with air defense, and I believe in some time in the future they will be getting the air defense guns now held by the Army Air Defense, and the DRDO for having made this venue available for our event. I would like to thank all the delegates who attended yesterday and today from the Army, Navy, Air Force, DRDO, paramilitary forces and industry. And I would like to thank the sponsors, Rafael Advanced Defense Systems and Larsen & Toubro, without whose financial support we could not have sustained this event.